This week in wrestling news, I'm talking about the first official matches of the season, the dumbest rule ever invented in wrestling, and which teams could potentially beat the Iowa Hawkeyes this season. Can any team do it? Let's stop stalling and start talking wrestling. What's going on, wrestling fans? My name's Josiah, and welcome to the Fanco Wrestling Show, the first official live show of 2021. This is something I've been wanting to do for quite some time, and I'm happy that I can actually do it now live on YouTube. This is the Season 3 for the 2021 season, and I want to tell you to be looking out for the Fanco Wrestling Show on Apple Podcasts. I will be having you allowed to be able to download this on Apple Podcasts very, very soon. But for right now, we are here on YouTube, and I'm psyched to talk about everything going on in this show because there is quite some news this week. I mean, it was the first official weekend of wrestling, and it didn't disappoint. Well, maybe it did. So first, let's talk about the first main topic of the day. What were the takeaways from the first weekend of wrestling? So listen, what were the takeaways from the first weekend of wrestling? There were 5 big takeaways that I think we can talk about from this season. And it started off as kind of a disappointing note at the beginning of the year. Unfortunately, we had to talk about the first takeaway, which is postponements will be a problem this season, okay? I woke up on New Year's Day pumped to be able to wrestle on New Year's Day against UNC, Campbell and UNC. Of course, you know, I work for Campbell, and so I would be at the match, but unfortunately, the match was postponed. So the first official match was postponed, and I think that's something we're just going to have to learn to deal with this season, unfortunately, is the postponement of matches. The serious note is that, like, programs over the last 6 months were kind of able to keep certain things hidden. They didn't necessarily need to announce everything going on in the program, but now that the season's here and dual meets will be affected by COVID-related issues, we're going to know which teams are dealing with this, and we're going to get postponements. Just actually recently, Fresno State and Stanford match, which is supposed to happen this Friday, was postponed, so that's something unfortunate, but that's the first takeaway. The second takeaway is that teams will all be looking for extra matches. So that's kind of the new phrase this year. It's not exhibitions or whatever term you want. It's extra matches. And essentially what that is the teams will wrestle in official duel, and they will get their official matches in, and then they'll get some extra matches in. And the reason that this is happening is because there are no tournaments this year other than the conference championships, other than the NCAA tournament. There will be no tournaments this season. You know, no Midlands, no Scuffle. Obviously, that stuff's all over, so that's kind of unfortunate to see, but we will see teams wrestling a lot of extra matches. I mean, if you watch Gardner-Webb and NC State this weekend, NC State blew them out, but there were 20 extra matches after that. It's good for both teams because a lot of times these other teams can throw their starters or backups in. NC State may be able to throw some of their backups in and wrestle some extra guys. So it's good to be able to understand for like a team like NC State or whoever that is. It's good for that. So that's exciting. So the next thing that we have to talk about are some of the duels. So the third takeaway is Navy will be a threat in the future. And if you're watching this now and you're able to comment, I'm interested in knowing what was your favorite match to watch this weekend. I, of course, was at the Campbell and Virginia Tech match. That was an exciting one for me. But Navy and Pitt happened this weekend. We'll talk a little bit about Northern Colorado and Wyoming. But Navy and Pitt happened this weekend. And man, I'll be honest, I was looking out for Navy to have a great match this season and a great opener, and they did. Now, they didn't beat Pitt. Pitt ended up winning the duel 22-14. However, Navy won the first 4 out of 5 matches, so that was darn impressive start for Navy and Coach Colat, who is now the head coach at Navy after leaving Campbell this past season, and everybody knew that he was going to do something special at Navy, just like he had done at Campbell. But this is a real testament to what he's been able to accomplish in these last 6, 7, 8 months. So Tresser started out strong against Camacho. Philippi was able to get a win at 133. But I think one interesting match was Cody Tribus over Cole Matthews. Not a crazy upset, but it was an impressive win for Tribus. And then we kind of got to the halfway point, and the unfortunate part for Navy was that Pitt just rattled back, and they won the next 5 matches. So Navy was up 14-3. halfway through this match, and then Pitt won the last 5. Jake Wenzel had an impressive win over Tanner Skidgel, who is Navy's arguably best guy. And listen, Kerry Collette is he's the real deal. He was a great coach at Campbell. He's a great coach at Navy. We're going to continue to see him do things, especially with his great coaching staff, with Mike Evans, with Blaise Cabell. I mean, it's a great staff there. The next thing this weekend, or that happened this weekend, is Northern Colorado. They are a real up and coming team, and I don't like. Sometimes the phrase "up and coming" like kind of makes people think that they're not quite there yet, and maybe they aren't quite there yet, but they're getting there. They really are getting there. I'll be honest, like, I think that Northern Colorado has a shot to have a couple of All-Americans this season, which is impressive for a smaller program like that has been growing. And I'll talk about who I really think can All-American this year on Northern Colorado's team. But they defeated Wyoming 24-19, an impressive duel. It was 5 matches to 5 matches. Northern Colorado had some great bonus points. That was really able to put them up ahead. They were up 24-0. Going into halfway through this bout. So, I mean, at the break, 5 matches in, they had 24 points on the board. Now, the unfortunate part is kind of after that, this is like very similar to the Pitt and Navy duel. Like, they kind of got derailed after that, where they lost the next 5 matches, but it was not enough for Wyoming to come back. It was 24-19. That was the final score. A great match. Tate Samuelson of Wyoming was able to beat Alan Clothier in a 3-1 decision. That was a great ranked match. Number 24, Tate Samuelson of Wyoming. Wyoming was able to take a couple of the ranked matches away, like ranked guy versus ranked guy, away from Northern Colorado, which is usually with a program like that, the ranked guys are the guys getting the wins, and the guys who aren't ranked are maybe struggling a little bit. But I think that they're going to be able to compete if they change some of these things in the future. Now, Andrew Alvarez has made leaps in the offseason. Let's be honest about that. He's made leaps. He was a senior nationals champion in the offseason, and I think he turned a lot of heads there. But now, coming back to his first match of the season, winning by fall, an impressive win. I mean, he's the guy that I expect All-American this year. He's ranked, I believe, currently like around the 10 spot. I expect him to fully be an All-American by the end of the season. And next, the 5th takeaway I have from this opening weekend of wrestling is that lineups are going to be in total flux. They're going to be in absolute total flux. With the extra year, there's more flexibility in the lineup. You know, will teams be wrestling their full lineups, their starters? It seems like they're just throwing the best lineup out there that they have. And to me, that just makes sense. You know, with this free year, with this extra year that guys have of eligibility, they're just going to be able to compete against or throw out whoever they want to compete, which I think is awesome for wrestling fans. But it's also great for these guys who maybe, if they're coming in as a freshman, may consider taking that redshirt freshman year, but now that they're actually able to get this extra year, may as well throw them out there, and we may get a great needle in the haystack, or whatever you want to call it, a great diamond in the rough, I guess is the analogy I'm looking for. But we may also not know the full starters until conference championship time, with guys being able to get 4 matches in to qualify for the NCAA championships, and teams they're just throwing guys back and forth. Who are we going to see at which spot? We don't know. We may not know until conference championship time for a couple of these teams, which is kind of exciting to know about that. Now, one lineup note before we get into the next topic is Anthony Valencia is back at 165 pounds, which is very interesting, and I think we're going to see him do very well at that weight. So those are my takeaways from the first weekend. Please comment below. Who do you think, or what do you think were some of your takeaways from the first official weekend now that we are back, now that college wrestling is back? And listen, now that college wrestling is back, we have to talk about something that's just dumb. Just completely dumb rule. There was the rule, of course, we knew back in 2019 that was implemented called hands to the face. A very dumb rule, which has since been fixed for the most part. It had affected a couple matches, looking at the Sebastian Rivera versus Spencer Lee match, looking at some Dayton Fix and Nick Suriano matches. But now let's talk about these dumb rules. So the dumbest rule of the season. Wrestlers are not allowed to shake hands before they wrestle. Now, listen, it's not a penalty. It's not something that the team is going to be penalized or the wrestler is going to be penalized, at least not yet. But wrestlers are not allowed to shake hands before they wrestle. Are you kidding me? like, let's just think about this for a second. So, let me talk about this first. So there are certain new rules implemented because of the virus and because of things that have happened, which is totally understandable. You have to implement these rules to appease people and for health guidelines. Like, that's understandable, okay? Like, only guys on deck and in the hole can warm up without their masks on. Referees are not allowed to touch the wrestlers, minimizing the points of contact. There are just certain things going on, right, that are understandable. But the not shaking hands, so this comes from a recent NCAA playbook talking about the COVID procedures and protocols. I'll actually have it linked up down below in the description if you're interested in checking out further in detail. It's like a 50 page document that changes every single month. So at the start of each bout, wrestlers will come out to the center of the mat, acknowledge each other with a nod, or by knuckling without touching. So they essentially have to go like that, or, they can't touch each other. They can't shake hands. So this is the same at the beginning of the match and the end of the match. So after the match is over, they cannot shake hands. They're not allowed. Wrestlers shall not shake hands. Accidental or inadvertent handshakes will not be penalized. So there's what I'm saying. It won't be penalized, at least. Thank goodness. But this is just crazy. They're shaking hands, and then as soon as the whistle blows, they're going to tie up. They're going to grip the other guy. They're going for collar ties. They're going to attack this other guy, but they handshake. No. Don't want to have anybody shaking hands. I'm sorry. It's just absurd. It's just one of those dumb rules that makes absolutely no sense. Like, the things off the mat, I'm okay with, okay? But the no handshaking. Now, listen, watching wrestling this weekend, almost every match I watched, the guys shook hands. That's not what's going through their head. They're not going through their head. They're not going out there and like, oh, don't want to shake this guy's hand. Don't want to shake this guy's hand. Like, if that's going through their head, they need to get their priorities straight now, right? They're going out there. I want to wrestle this guy. It's been in their blood since they were a child to shake hands. That's a form of being a classy wrestler, a sportsmanship, and shaking guys' hands before and after the match. Listen, I understand it's things that we're going to have to get used to, but it's kind of silly to me. And now let's get on to the main topic of the show. So the main topic of the show: can any team upset the Iowa Hawkeyes this season? Before I get into this video, please comment below, can any team actually upset Iowa this year? Or am I absolutely crazy in talking about these three teams who I believe can defeat the Iowa Hawkeyes? So I'm going to pull up the Iowa Hawkeyes roster, and oh my goodness, is it loaded. All 10 guys ranked in the top 10. Their entire lineup is back except for Pat Lugo, but guess what? Since Pat Lugo's not out, the thing is, Jaden Ironman transferred in the offseason. He's at 141, bumping Max Mirren up to 149, and all 10 guys are ranked. Almost every single guy is actually in All-American position. I think Abe Assad's the only guy just outside of that who's at the number 9 spot right now, and he's knocking on that door for sure. So, listen, before I get into the first team who I think can upset Iowa, which is actually Nebraska, we have to talk about a couple things. One, these are not the scores that I believe are going to happen in the match, right? Like, I don't necessarily think that this is the outcome of every single duel. However, I think it's fun to speculate and talk about what could happen with some of these teams and with some of these duels. I think that's what this is about. So don't give me hate for that. These are not my predictions or projections. I'm just looking at what teams have to do in order to beat the Hawkeyes. And the first team, and because we only have to talk about Big Ten, because unfortunately Iowa's only going to be wrestling Big Ten this season, so we're not looking at like an Okie State or an NC State, which I didn't even dive into those. But the first team, Nebraska, okay? And Nebraska is they were the toughest one that I had to find a way to be able to beat Iowa. At first, I thought that they were going to be very tough to beat Iowa. But upon closer speculation, I actually found that there are some chinks in Iowa's armor that Nebraska can potentially attack and take advantage of. So this is the Iowa's home opener. And the keys to victory for Nebraska here are that they're going to have to flip previous losses and maintain recent victories. So flip previous losses and maintain recent victories. And this is the lineup, of course, for Nebraska. A very tough lineup and one of my favorite teams that I'm watching. Right now, they're ranked number 5 by the coaches poll. I believe that's too low. I think they should actually be higher. I don't think they're given enough respect in Nebraska, but it's just a tough lineup this year. So let's look at some of these matches. So the matches they're going to have to flip are DeSanto and Lovett. This was a 1-0 match at Big Tens last year. And DeSanto and Lovett, I mean, it was a match, okay? And I think that this is a match that Lovett may be able to flip. And if he flips, that's going to be big for Nebraska. The next match is Kemmerer and Labriola. Now, listen, I'll be honest. Michael Kemmerer is my prediction to win the NCAA title this year. I believe he's going to be a national champion. But Labriola and Kemmerer wrestled. It was 3-1 last time they wrestled, and it was a close match. Kemmerer was able to get the better of Labriola, but Labriola, that's a perfectly flippable match, if flippable is actually a word. The next thing that I said is they're going to have to keep their recent wins. So Rob is going to have to beat Young again, who he beat 3-2 last time. Taylor Venz is going to have to beat Abe Assad, and that's if Assad is the starter, because we could see Nelson Brand starting out for the Hawkeyes. So the 6-4 decision last time for Venz. We also have Schultz beating Warner last time, 3-1, and Schultz, I think, is a serious threat. So is Warner, though. I mean, let's not give Warner, not give him the credit he deserves, because he deserves a lot of credit. So Murin, I think, is another key to victory here. How's he going to do at 149? Can redshirt freshman Kevon Davenport actually beat Max Murin? I don't know that he can, but he's going to have to if Nebraska wants to beat the Hawkeyes this season. Now, the toughest key in all these matches is Spencer Lee. I fully expect Spencer Lee to tech, pin, or major every single opponent this season. He almost did it last season. The only match, he had one match last season where he didn't do it, and that was against, I believe it was against Michigan's starter. But he's going to do that every season. And so that's essentially putting a lot of these teams in a hole, because Spencer's scoring 4 or 5, likely 6 points at every single duel. So that's tough. So listen, if you're interested, and I will get into my next two teams, but if you're interested in the exact team breakdowns, I actually wrote an in-depth article. I'm extremely proud of this article I wrote last night. I looked and pretty much gave match-by-match predictions of what needs to happen in order for Nebraska or these other two teams to beat Iowa. In order for any team to beat Iowa, I went match by match, gave the team score projections of what needs to happen. If you're looking for that, I actually have that interest available on my Patreon page, Fanco Wrestling. You can go to it down in the link in the description below, or patreon.com/Fanco Wrestling, where you'll find this article, which, again, like I said, I'm super proud of it, super excited, a great in-depth article, as well as many other wrestling news and wrestling content, behind the scenes Fanco stuff. So if you're a big Fanco Wrestling supporter, this is the way to support the channel, to get additional content that you wouldn't necessarily be getting on the channel, some more personal stuff. So you can join for as little as $1.99 a month, or as much as $9.99 a month, whichever is most acceptable to you, whichever you can afford. If not, let's get on with the rest of this video. And the second team that I believe can beat Iowa this season is Michigan. So Michigan, I believe, in the last time these two teams wrestled, it was 27-9. Iowa beat them. So Iowa smacked them down. If you remember last year, Iowa was on a complete revenge tour. Now, Michigan's lineup right here that I have up, the first thing you have to look at is, like, are these going to be the complete stars? Is this the Michigan lineup? It appears so. We'll see if Micic actually comes back for his 47th season, or what he's going to do in the upcoming future. But for this is a tough team. Okay, so Michigan's key to victories is their veterans, such as Micic, such as Massa, such as Amin. They're going to have to show up, and show up big time. They're going to have to show that they made improvements in the offseason and show it on the mat. Show it on the mat with results. That's the only way that they're going to be able to beat a team like that's as good as Iowa with these improvements. Now, their first 6 bouts, look at these first 6 bouts, 125 up to 165. They're pretty heavily favored in Iowa's favor for the most part. You know, I think Micic is somebody who isn't necessarily, like, I don't think DeSanto is favored over Micic. Micic is actually favored over DeSanto, since he has the last 2 wins over DeSanto. DeSanto, I mean, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, actually teched Micic in his freshman year, which is, like, just so crazy to me. Micic has beat him since then, and I don't think either of those guys are the same wrestlers they were that long ago, but we have to talk about that a little bit. I think Micic is going to have to get a win. Now, the beginning part of this lineup is tough, because expect Spencer Lee, expect Jaden Ironman, expect Alex Marinelli to not just win, but score bonus points. I mean, really, with a guy at 141 with Matten. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for Iowa to not score bonus points here, right? So the next thing is Storr and Murin. This is actually a toss-up. This is a top 10, top 15 matchup between these two guys, and I think that it's possible that it could flip in Storr's favor. Now, if he wants to win this match for Michigan, he's going to have to win the match, right? He's going to have to find a way to beat Max Murin. I think that's a match that's possible. Now, Massa and Kemmerer, okay? Massa and Kemmerer at 174. That's a potential NCAA finals match. It really is. Now, Massa is coming off of a great offseason. Him and Mason Parris both winning senior nationals titles. Massa he's bumping up a weight, looking so big, looking massive, if you want to take that. So, with Massa and Kemmerer, Massa's going to have to beat Kemmerer. Do I think he will? I don't think so. I think Kemmerer is going to ultimately get the win here, but Massa's going to have to win here. Amin and Assad, another interesting match. Amin, I think, has the possibility to score bonus potential. Parris actually pinned Anthony Cassiope last year, so you can potentially expect him to do that again. Mason Parris is a pinner. It's not like he just had this one pin or it was a fluke situation. Mason Parris is the real deal, and I think that he could potentially pin Anthony Cassiope again. So they're going to have to get those bonus points. They're going to have their guys from last year win big, and that's all there is to it. And they're going to have to find some other upsets, like potentially at 197 with Jelani Embry. He's going to have to try to find a way to get that upset. Now, the third team that I think could beat Iowa, and you probably know who it is Penn State, okay? Now, listen. I called the duel last year. I did say that Penn State I thought was going to beat Iowa, and everybody called me absurd. Josiah, you're a moron. Josiah, you don't know what you're talking about. And I pretty much called the duel the exact score that it was, just about. I believe the only switch was I had Mark Hall winning over Michael Kemmerer, which I didn't expect that to happen. I didn't. I'll call it out for what it was. I didn't expect that to happen, but it did. But my score was basically spot on. Now, listen. I'm not saying that's going to happen this year, and the thing is, Iowa has more of a veteran team than Penn State. Penn State has a lot of young guys, and a lot of people are expecting the keys to victory here to be the young guys. And I'm here to tell you that I actually don't think that the young guys are the key to victory. The key to victory are that the returners must do their part. They have to. Now, it comes down really. This match is going to come down to winning matches and not scoring bonus. So a lot of times in the past, Penn State has been the bonus team. That's just who they've been, right? They've been the bonus team. And I don't think that that's who they are going to be against a team like Iowa this year, where a lot of these guys who score bonus, Roman Bravo-Young, Nick Lee, Aaron Brooks, they're going to be matched against a tough opponent. And they're not going to be able to score bonus points. Has it happened in the past? Yes, it has happened with crazy matches in the past, but I'm not counting on it, okay? So, especially, again, we'll see how Penn State's 125-pounder will do. I believe Penn State has been kind of cursed at 125 pounds. I hope that they can revitalize that weight this year. And please let me know what your thoughts are on the Penn State versus Iowa duel. How excited are you for it this year? It's going to be so exciting. I believe it's around Valentine's Day weekend. Not the season of love, the weekend of love, but the weekend of rivalries. And as I was talking about, Spencer Lee, who is, let's be honest, Spencer Lee just was awarded the Hodge Trophy this year, is the Hodge Trophy contender. He's looking to probably score 5 to 6 points. Penn State will try to have to hold him, but even if he does get 6, I don't think it's out of their reach. Now, first let's talk about the returners. So, Rome Bravo-Young versus Austin DeSanto at 133. Nick Lee versus Jaden Ironman. And then Aaron Brooks versus Abe Assad. Now, Brooks against Assad or Nelson Brands. I think Brooks can potentially actually get Brooks can potentially get bonus points on Abe Assad. I think he can. But he at least needs to get the win, potentially bonus points. Brooks, I think, is a favorite to All-American and potentially win a national title this year. He's looked great last year. I'm excited to see how he does competing in the postseason. Nick Lee versus Jaden Ironman. I'm excited for this one because right now Ironman ranked around that number 1 spot by most outlets is Ironman. Nick Lee, who had a phenomenal season last year. He was a point-scoring machine, by all measures. And I'm interested to see how he does against Ironman. If he wants Penn State to win, he's going to have to win, right? If he wants to win a national title, he's going to have to find a way to beat Jaden Ironman. Now, Jaden Ironman is the only guy in college to ever beat Yanni Diakomahalis, who Nick Lee has a loss against. So, like, the rankings are where they should be, but then, you want to throw in some other guys. I mean, 141 is just, it's a load of weight. But let's talk about some of these things. As we talk about some of these things, also is RBY versus DeSanto. Now, we all know that the RBY versus DeSanto match last year didn't go as DeSanto planned or as Iowa planned, right? That was a very controversial match, and for many reasons, mostly because of the cradle that RBY was able to lock up. Not once, but twice, he was able to lock that up. And, end up RBY didn't necessarily get the win. It was the injury default, but he did end up beating at Big Tens. I think RBY can beat him again. Will he score a bonus on him? Will he be able to pin him in a cradle? I don't know if it'll happen this year, but I think he can beat him. I mean, he has to. As for the freshmen, okay, those were the returners. The freshmen, Carter Sirachi versus Michael Kemmerer. I don't. In order for Penn State to beat Iowa, I don't necessarily think that this match has to go in Penn State's favor. I think that this is a tough Pennsylvania bout, right? It's a tough Pennsylvania bout, and the fact that both are PIAA state champions, going at it in college. Super stoked to see what happens here, but I think Kemmerer is the veteran. I think he's going to be able to beat Sirachi this year. Jolie and Marinelli. Now, Jolie stepping in at 165. I wish we could get one more Marinelli versus Vincenzo Joseph match, but now that Vincenzo Joseph is gone, we have the Jolie versus Marinelli bout. We'll see how that goes. I expect Marinelli to get that win. Warner and Beard. Beard's going to have to pull off an upset. I don't know if he can or not, but he's going to have to find a way to win against Warner. That's going to be really, I think, the big key match here is Beard is going to have to find a way to win, because I think Kirkfleet is a threat for a national title. I think that Kirkfleet is 100% able to win a national title this year, if not, at least All-American. And Cassiope has been somebody who's been in contention last year and to All-American. He had some unfortunate losses to Stevenson, to Mason Paris, who are, the clear number 1, number 2 guys. We'll see how Kirkfleet does, and I think that we're going to see him pull out some big things in this Iowa match. So excited to see what happens here. These are the teams that I think have a chance to beat Iowa, especially, I think the other key here that I did not mention yet is actually Verclaren and Murin. Verclaren is somebody who I really want to be rooting for. I am rooting for him, obviously, as a Penn State guy, but I think that this is the key. He has a lot of close matches with really good guys at his weight. But how is he going to do? He had a great match against Sasso last year, but he kept it close, but just wasn't able to score. If he can score against Murin and pull something off, I think that Penn State could potentially get the victory over the Iowa Hawkeyes. Again, if you want to check out the full article with everything related to these matches, the full breakdown, you can check that out on the Fanco Wrestling Patreon channel. But if not, then we're going to get on to the next topic, which is the segment that I'm calling this year, Who's on Top? Who's on top? Who are the number 1 guys at every single weight class? Especially at the beginning of the season, I think it's interesting to dive in and analyze who is on top as we head into the season. Now, really, I think a lot of these guys may stay the same throughout the season. Well, it's interesting because with in-conference competition, there's not always that competition where we're going to see a lot of interchanging between number 1, number 2 guys, number 3 guys, because a lot of times they're from other conferences. Not all the times. With Big Ten, it's a super exciting conference, but as our, I just think it's exciting to watch wrestling, right? So let's talk about every number 1 ranked wrestler right now. And I'm kind of looking at every single news source. So this includes Mat Scouts, Flow Wrestling, Win Magazine, Intermat, and Open Mat. Now, I did not do my own rankings for these wrestlers. I do my own team rankings because I really love to dive into those. But as far as the individuals, I have some opinions on who should be number 1, and there are some discrepancies between this. So first at 125, it's Spencer Lee, right? He's the top pound-for-pound wrestler in the entire country. You all knew that. He just was awarded the Hodge Trophy from the 2020 season. 2-time national champ, looking to be a 4-timer. was undefeated last season, Big Ten champion, finally won his Big Ten championship, well-deserved, especially at 125, okay? And I see him, like I said earlier, I think he can bonus, major, tack his way through the entire season, pin his way through the entire season with bonus points. I really believe that's possible for Spencer Lee. Now let's move to 133. There is a little bit of discrepancy here, and which is kind of understandable considering the situation. So, is Nick Suriano going to return? We don't really know yet. And if he does return, he is likely he should have that number one spot at 133 pounds. The returning national champion at 133 pounds will be Nick Suriano. Now, leave a comment. Do you think that Suriano will return, or do you think that he's going to do other things this season? Now, if he doesn't return, the guy that will be at the top here is going to be Dayton Fix. Dayton Fix was a national finalist with Nick Suriano, and I mean, with their two hour-long matches that they had a couple seasons ago, which I don't know, there was some excitement there, but it was mostly just what is happening with all these crazy calls? Let's hope we don't get that if they do wrestle in the upcoming year. But Fix is somebody who really only had a couple losses. One was to Suriano, who he had that loss to in the national finals, of course. He had a loss to Mickey Philippi. So Philippi, again, at a weight at 133 where there's a lot of tough guys, you could see Philippi kind of stepping up there, but Dayton Fix is your number one guy at 133 pounds. And that's hoping that he's able to come back this season, depending on, everything that kind of happened with him in the last year in the off season. The next person that I have to talk about is at 141 pounds. Now, I'll be honest with you. I think Flow Wrestling is just blatantly wrong on this. Flow Wrestling has Sebastian Rivera at number one at 141 pounds. They're wrong. Okay, I'm sorry, but he should not be at the number one spot. Now, interestingly enough, Mad Scouts actually has Sebastian Rivera at the number 6 spot. I don't actually agree with that either. I don't think that he should be that low. I think he should be around that probably number 3 spot. I think it should be Jaden Ironman, who is number 1 and who pretty much every other outlet has at number 1. So Matt Scouts has Rivera at number 6, has Ironman at number 1. The other outlets, Win Magazine, Intermat, Open Mat, which I have links to all down in the description below to their rankings, have Ironman at number 1. He's the only loss that Ironman has had since 2018 is Albert, gone, graduated. Joey McKenna, gone, graduated. Bryce Meredith, gone, graduated. And Yanni Diakomahalis, who cannot compete this season. So Ironman has the clear number 1 spot right now. We'll see what will happen to him as far as when he wrestles some competition against Sebastian Rivera and against Nick Lee. I think we'll have a different conversation. But right now, Ironman should have that number 1 spot. With Rivera, who was an All-American in the past, he plays 6th and 3rd, and is bumping up a weight class. He bumped up from 25 to 33, and now he's at 141, and had a great season at each of those weights, but now at 141, maybe Sebastian Rivera pulls off some crazy upsets like he has in the past. We'll see. But right now, Jaden Ironman should be at number 1. At 149, this is, again, a different discrepancy where Flow Wrestling has Sammy Sasso at the number 1 spot, where every other outlet has Austin O'Connor. So Austin O'Connor his only loss last season was to Pat Lugo. Now, Sasso has a win and a loss versus Pat Lugo this season, which is why Flow Wrestling has them at that spot. I guess I understand, but not completely. I don't think that Sasso should be number 1 yet. I think that he has a strong inclination to be there eventually at the end of the season. But right now, I don't know. With a win and a loss over Pat Lugo last season, who was the number 1, Austin O'Connor only had that loss. So I get it, okay? It was at Midlands. It was a great match. But he is a former All-American where Sammy Sasso is not. He placed 3rd in the past. Austin O'Connor, I think, is going to have a phenomenal season and is actually the first guy on this list, he's the second guy on this list to not be in the Big Ten. A lot of number 1 Big Ten guys, so it's exciting to see somebody who's in the ACC who's at that number 1 spot. 157, Deacon. Deacon he's the number 1 guy at 157, okay? And this is disputed, I guess, a little bit. Some people think that Hidley should be number 1. I don't think so because Deacon has a win over Hidley last season, and Deacon really stepped up onto the scene whenever he had that huge jump at the Cliff Keen Las Vegas tournament, which was a great jump for him. He's a former All-American, placed 6th. And like I said, he just made huge leaps and bounds last season, was able to beat Hayden Hiley, and with his matches like with David Carr, with Hayden Hiley, with Deacon, this is just going to be an exciting triangle of a year with these guys, especially since we're not going to see these guys all wrestle until the national championship. And they already had some exciting matches in the offseason in the tournament, which was cool to see. But with 21-0, Big Ten champion, he deserves that number one spot at 157, which is where he is. He is on top at 157. Now let's talk about the next weight at 165. Okay, at 165 is Mekhi Lewis. Mekhi Lewis is returning Virginia Tech national champion. I know a lot of people are super stoked to see Mekhi. I saw him in action this weekend. Looks solid, and we'll see how he does this season. Can he maintain that national title this season with a very, very determined Alex Marinelli? Now, they had a tough match in the quarterfinals a couple of years ago. I think that match is able to be flipped by Alex Marinelli, but Mekhi took a season off to train for that Olympic red shirt, or to train for the Olympics, took that Olympic red shirt, and I think we're going to see some good things from him this upcoming season and beyond, okay? So now let's talk about 174. Undisputed, easily Michael Kemmer's number one. Bumping up from previous season at 157, where he had Nolf in his way pretty much every single season, was able to All-American twice at third and fourth, just couldn't quite get over that Nolf match. And that's kind of how the Hiley match was too. So that's at 157. But now at 174, able to beat down Mark Hall last season. I mean, in that duel, do you remember that duel when Michael Kemmer just kept taking down Mark Hall? My mind was blown. It was blown. I couldn't believe it. Kemmer proved that he should be the number one guy. Big Ten champ, undefeated last. No, excuse me, not Big Ten champ. He lost to Mark Hall at the Big Ten championships. But the duel. The duel was exciting. So he wasn't undefeated, had that one loss. And I think it'll be interesting for Kemmer because he was a one-time PIAA state champion, won it in his senior year, had a couple guys in his way before that. I think he can be a national champion in his senior year again. In his final year of eligibility is Michael Kemmer at 174. At 184, a couple of different things here. Now, Matt Scouts believes that Aaron Brooks should be number one. That's Willie Saylor, of course. You can check him out on Rockfin is his content, which some great rankings. He always likes to say it's the best rankings. I don't necessarily know that Aaron Brooks should be number one right now. Could he win it? Yeah, but should he be number one right now? Maybe not. Miles Amin is the number one right now. He is the three-time All-American. I think he's one of the only All-Americans at this weight. There are a couple returning, I guess, but he's a three-time All-American. Placed fourth, third, and third. His last, get this. His last 7 losses were to Mark Hall or Zahid Valencia at 174 pounds, which, upon relooking at these stats, one, I still can't believe that Zahid was down at 174, seeing how big he is now, but his last 7 losses were to Mark Hall or Zahid. So Miles Amin is somebody, now that he's stepping up to 184, his only losses were to those 2 studs, national champions. I think that we're going to see good things out of Miles Amin this season, as well as at 197, I think we're going to see some great things out of Noah Adams. Noah Adams, 32-0 last year, 32-0 in 2020, the Big 12 champion. He was somebody who, I don't want to say came out of nowhere, but he made his way onto the scene being undefeated, had some good wins. I was excited to see how he did at the national tournament to see if he can pull off some more ranked, more touted wins, and I think he definitely can in the future. But Noah Adams of West Virginia is the number one guy at 197 pounds, and that leaves heavyweight, which is Gable Steveson. Gable Steveson, 15-0 in 2020, the national semifinalist, All-American from Minnesota. I think that Gable Steveson has a great shot to win the national trophy this year. We'll see. I mean, heavyweight is honestly, and this I don't say this a lot, and I haven't said this in recent years, but heavyweight is one of the most stacked weights in the NCAA. It really is. With Gable Steveson, Mason Paris, Greg Kirkfleet coming in there, Anthony Cassiope. Oh my goodness. These guys at heavyweight. And drop a comment what you think will be the most difficult weight this season with all these number one guys, as well as how many of these guys do you think will actually stay at the number one spot? Now, let's talk about the end in going into next week. And going into next week, we have some exciting matches. Anthony Ashnault versus Yanni Diakomahalis. Jordan Burroughs versus David Taylor, each happening this weekend. And man, I'm super stoked to see what happens this weekend in wrestling, as well as in collegiate wrestling. For Fanco Wrestling, my name is Josiah Richko, and that was your wrestling news.